Hi, live. I'm Bob.
Welcome back, Templar.
Oh.
Mate.
Okay, God, you hate me. No.
He lied as easily as he breathed.
Who's in here lying?
Hello, Hirsch.
Oh, what's up?
Rare spawn.
Rare spawn.
Oh my god, a shiny.
We also had
real.
Zephyr.
Cat is live.
We know.
Probably for the best. Good luck, Cat.
Goodbye.
Cat.
Hello guys, how's it going? Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. I thought it would be easier to set up for stream, and it was not. As you are. How is chat doing? As Monday goes, indeed. You know, it might help if my video capture device was turned on. Hello, chat. Whee! There we go. I still feel like the saturation of this camera is just off. Go ahead and do that. I don't know why. I wish I could get the camera settings to actually like stay, but they never seem to want to. Okay. Hello guys, how's it going? How is everyone doing? Hello, Epi. Epi for Saber, but needed Muramasa, who will be my Grand Saber, to get that buff. Muramasa got a buff, though. Muramasa's, like, really in some other units that are out there, but I truly don't believe it was, like, actually a problem, because Muramasa has always been one of the better, like, loopers, and he has a Swiss Army knife kit. Like, you can't stop the man. He's going to kill you eventually. Is at least the way I've chosen to look at Muramasa over the years. I wanted Ibuki or the Twins to get it. I was actually surprised it wasn't Ibuki, especially after Mr. 2's comment about them touching units that hadn't been touched. So the fact that they went in and did Saber again was surprising to me. And it does look like this was the buff that they were testing. If you guys remember, originally there was a leaked image of Saber getting a buff. The buff was to her charisma, and it changed the icon to a Buster icon. So some of us were wondering, like, what the heck that was going to like be and when that was going to come out. And it's clear that, like, the buff that we got is not the buff that they were probably testing back then. But it is a buff. And I can't argue that Saber couldn't have used something, but I don't think Saber's been in a bad spot for a long time now. Truth be told, she never really has actually been in a bad spot. I know there were a lot of people like way back in the early days of FGO that wanted to like shit on her and say that like, oh, she wasn't good, she was outdone by her competition, and even some of her other forms. This was never true. And it was always a weird sentiment. And I think this is just going back to the era of like FGO where we didn't have everything like amassed and dated out. Also, I just realized there are dinosaurs back here moving across. I've never noticed that detail. Like, not even once. But definitely, I think she has gotten a whole lot better from where she was. I don't think she was a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination back then, but she definitely lacked certain capabilities, and that was one of the criticisms. Like, I know, for instance, there was a period of time where everyone just used Mordred over her, and the entire reasoning for that was simply because Mordred had charge. So, I always took that as less of a statement about, like, Saber's overall firepower and more of one as to, like, how her kit worked. And they have made vast improvements to the kit, so we really don't have much to complain about in that regard. Also, Morty's daughter. Yeah, I've long looked at it and said, like, people that want Mordred to be stronger than Saber kind of have it wrong. It's that, like, Mordred should be different than Saber. Mordred should be more lore philosophy. What do I think of Enkidu at MP1 for the pick and the free SSR ticket? I think Enkidu at MP1 is fine. I don't think there's any issues there. It really just boils down to like how much you see yourself using Enkidu. If you need that like strong single target Lancer that's going to be like a little bit of a solo artist, that's definitely a good option for you. More often than not, I have favored other Lancers other than Enkidu. But it's mostly because Enkidu does have long cooldowns, so you really have to be on your A game with how you solo Enkidu sometimes. Or just kind of up against somebody that's divine where Enkidu is just going to stun lock them and it's not going to matter. Mordred lacks her guts and charisma from the lore. You know, I don't know about that. I know at least, like, Apocrypha seems to allege that she had guts. But I've wondered about that myself, as like, is that something that they're actually trying to like make a thing? I don't know. Okay, we'll leave NA there for right now. Go touch JP. We are almost capped out. Fourth copy of Oz with free ticket. Yep. I mean, the ticket's still probably a little bit of a ways off, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I have already done OG Saber's upgrade here. Looks like I need to do 6 runs of something here on JP because I have 6 storm pods. I have actually, ironically enough, been using Logris because it was pointed out to me that I still don't have my Logris Bond 10. I actually have not used my Logris a shit ton since getting her. Not that like there's any sort of like dislike or anything there. Purely due to like the point of me being like, oh, this will get to Bond 10 eventually, and I'm not worried about it. But I was like, you know what? Why not just like power grind it at least to Bond 10? Taking subsequent Bond levels after 10 is something I don't have to care too much about. Do you still suggest mana loading as an append priority for Artoria? Yeah, it's still really, really good for her to have. But we'll go over it. Avalon sent me some details, and we can reevaluate things with the way things currently stand on Artoria. But yeah, it's just having that 30% charge. It's always going to be a nice thing for her to do that. Am I doing a video about who I recommend for the free ticket soon in NA? I don't know. I might. Like, I feel like I've done plenty of those videos over the years, and it largely just boils down to personal preference. If you're picking for gameplay, there's obviously some, like, standouts. And I often feel like people disregard that advice anyway, so I just don't know whether or not it's necessary for me to make one. 5th copy on a banner when he comes back. Nice. One night, one day till JP summer. I mean, it'll be what it'll be. So far, at least as of right now, I'm not altogether that excited for JP. I like, don't get me wrong, we'll still cover it. I'll still play it, yada yada yada. But like, truly, I just am not enthusiastic about the current lineup of units. And I know that's different for some of you guys. Some of you guys are really hype. I just think that most of the units on display here so far are units that I either don't have a strong predilection towards, or they're literally a newer character that it's difficult to have a strong feeling towards. Artoria buff, that's right. Right now we're going through on JP and finishing up the last of the upgrades that I need to do. If anything, I don't disregard your advice. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was just talking about this before, that people have a tendency to like jump to conclusions based off those raw numbers when the actual numbers end up being wildly different depending on like settings and stuff like that. And I think it's like we've done the community at large a disservice when we start advising them based up purely off the raw numbers, because it doesn't tell the actual like tale of what's going on. And that I've always tried to like shoot you guys straight on these things. I've always tried to give you guys at least accurate depictions of where units stand. And so it's like I said, it's just I've not been the biggest fan of how other people like present data for FGO. Do a YouTube short, pick your favorite fan. You know, that's the actual advice, but if you make a YouTube short on that, people will boo you and him and ha about that. They'd be like, you didn't give actual advice. What was the point of this? And it's like, that is the actual advice. Trying to make the 5-star sabers more competitive with both Saberface buffs. I don't know that I would necessarily say that. I think they at least saw that there was a little bit of a gap there with Logress, and truthfully, like, you guys will see. We'll talk about the numbers here, but the results may surprise you. I think, like, even back then, there was a lot of hype around Logress, but a lot of people didn't actually understand the numbers, and that Logress wasn't, like, appreciably more powerful than OG. And that's something I, like, have noticed, is that everyone's just like, oh my god, Logress is so much better. It's like, part of the reason for that is just the kit. Like, Logress's kit is just absolutely sick nasty. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if we are just looking at NP numbers are not that crazy different. And I think that's another thing, what I've said before, like, people have a tendency to take the wrong idea from things. And I don't understand why. I think it's just, there's naturally forces within the community that whip people into a frenzy about some of this stuff, and they have a tendency to just go ham and like have a almost like totalitarian view of things, where it's like, oh, this is the case, therefore all other things are terrible or bad by comparison. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily the case. Numbers be damned, Grandeur Jason. Exactly. These two Moon Seal, should this be enough for me for single target? For like the time being, sure. I think the only issue you'll run into is like Beast Moon not being good against the extra classes, but within reason, Seal should be. So I guess your real problem would be if you're up against a ruler boss and you don't appropriately have an Avenger. So I would say that's probably something to get, just in case your Seal is not like up to snuff for that. Or my wife or her husbando, they can keel. Yeah. And that's why I've tried to say, like, I've always made the channel more about like giving you guys a realistic look and then telling you guys to do whatever the hell you want, rather than making this point that like I don't know, like let's say it's like Lord Logris is the best unit ever. Everybody has to roll. Like all the other comparative units compared to her are terrible. Why would you guys ever roll it? You should feel bad for rolling. Like, I do feel like that is the sentiment that you get from some other people. And I'm like, no. And this is the other thing too. Like I've let's use again, someone was like, hey, Cad, summer's coming up in literally a day or two. Like, amazing, right? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not hype. But I expressed that that's my opinion. And I also acknowledge the fact that there are different opinions than mine. And that's why I've always tried to be that way with you guys. I've tried to let you guys know when I'm being biased so that you guys can disregard as you wish, as opposed to when I'm trying to give you like accurate information, you're like, oh, okay, we can trust what he's saying, right? Playing the crud out of it? How you liking it? People are arguing Ishtar needs a buff because her numbers aren't high on the sheet. The sheet is cancer now. Yeah, like I've said before, that people do not actually understand, and sometimes they miss the forest for the trees. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're arguing for Ishtar to get a buff, you're wrong. That's the purely like objective viewpoint that I have here. And there's a reason why. It's on sale right now. I was actually looking at, because I think all of the Bethesda games are on sale. And I also saw Assassin's Creed Odyssey is on sale pretty decent. I was like, maybe I'll finally pull the trigger on that. I don't know. I do think it's patently ridiculous that the base price of Odyssey is still like $60, despite it being a like 9-year-old game, but it is what it is. There's pretty much only one way summer can get me hyped, yeah. Wait, why would she need a buff? I think, and let's be honest here, okay? Chat, show of hands. How many of you guys are knowledgeable as to like every single buff that's come out recently on JP? Like, I'm talking like in the last 6 months. Oh. Some, but not most. Yeah, I'm not gonna call everyone that said yes a liar. But I can just tell you guys flat out that there's some that I don't remember. Like, it's difficult to keep it all up in your head. And I think that's where some people like start making arguments, because they either just don't know or they don't remember that things have changed, right? And that's kind of my point. I think a lot of people have a tendency to forget about stuff, or they're just arguing in bad faith because they're biased, and they're like, oh, like for instance, Ishtar's my favorite, so of course Ishtar needs a buff. No, Ishtar does not need a buff. There's really just no reasonable take, I would say, for why she needs one. People can argue for what could be buffed on her, but I don't think there's a reasonable approach for why she needs it. And the reason I say that is because that unit already is one of the highest like AoE damage dealers for archers, on top of having a seal-like skill that can just be activated every single turn. So if we're basing it off that, then you got to look at this stuff and go, does Seal need a buff? And I just don't think that's logical. Yeah, Vreeter absolutely needed a buff. That's one where, like, I remember waking up and seeing that, and I was like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy they did a thing. Let's give Seal an NP interlude. Yeah, she doesn't do enough damage, right? Because I had the audacity to hope for some Tava Lancer buffs. No, no, no. No. Everyone knows that the buff to Tamamo was literally the existence of Koyanskaya. Ishtar has that one turn delay that totally ruins her sarcasm. So this is a really interesting thing. Ishtar has a one turn delay. Okay? But here's the thing. What happens? So it's like, let's say you wipe these enemies out. Ishtar then uses her skill and will gain attack up at the end of that turn, which gets carried into the next wave. You want a unit that's broken for that? MHX has a delayed defense down. And if you wipe the wave, it still goes off at the end of the turn and applies to literally no one. That needs fixing. That is stupid. That is useless on certain turns. So, yeah, I don't really have a problem with a one-turn delay buff that's going to be carried forward. I have a major problem with a one-turn delay debuff that does not get carried forward. So I don't really know what the heck the devs were doing, but yeah, it should just... They just need to make it where it applies at the start of the next turn instead of the end of that turn or something, but I don't know. That way, at least it's like, oh, you kill the wave, so now these guys are gone, and you're now in turn 2, and then it applies at the start of the next wave to this new set of guys, and then you're good. But it's just one of those things where, like, you can tell it was not well thought out whenever they were planning it. So that being said, MHX has had a ton of buffs over the years, so it's like, what's the strong argument for her to get a buff? I don't know. I don't really necessarily think she does have a strong one. Other than Azrael existing at this point and Kama having a super buff, but... Laughs and Terror debuff. Yeah, Terror is very much a similar problem. And, like, don't get me wrong, Terror is 100% supposed to be used in, like, challenge content and stuff, so I do get that. And that's probably what they want you to do with MHX, it's just MHX doesn't really have a, like, very strong challenge capability. It's not awful, but, and I will admit I have used it more times than I would like to admit, but... That was the issue with Shanta Jalter's heal up too. Yep. Like Khosrow drops debuff. Khosrow drops debuff is at least a smarter one. Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Like, you can tell that the devs have realized that some of this stuff was a mistake, and then they come out with a newer unit later that has a similar effect, but the effect is much stronger or better designed. And that's when you know it's like, ah, yeah, the devs realized they fucked up. They shouldn't have done that. Okay, so that's all my strengthening quests on JP because I haven't finished leveling Orion. Let me see if my daily story spin has reset. It has. Mixa needs something? I do agree with that. Mixa does. But like at the end of the day, it's a welfare. I don't expect them to really buff welfares too often, unfortunately. Gilgamesh. Okay, there's my daily story. Let's see. So we still have 35 AP. Do we still have the 4 times on JP chat? Yes. I probably need to use that. Oko having her extra attack be split? Yeah. I do think Aoko is such a fun unit, but at the same time, I also think that one's poorly designed. And I know I upset some people before when I said it, but she basically is like 5-star Jekyll and Hyde, and I don't think that's a good thing. Like, she is much better designed than Jekyll and Hyde, but she still has one of the same major fallbacks, and it makes her clunky to use, and I do think it does make people avoid using her. Not actually making one for her? Yeah. Sarth, thank you for the 34. It was. It's really a crazy buff. We're gonna go over it. Just wait for the Aoko buff for the film. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. The second or third most voted on for a buff. Yeah, I think it's because truly, like, so many people got on board with her, and I think a lot of people left before they looked, and they were like, wait, like, she seems like she's really fun. She's at least better than Jekyll and Hyde's design, so, like, let's go with it. But then I think the problem is just simply due to the clunkiness of the character, people don't find themselves using her very often. Nice chat. I thought it was Final Fantasy VII music. The Kukulkan buff. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. In the same breath as like Ishtar not needing a buff, I don't think there's a logical reason to say that that Cuckoo needs one. So it's like, could you buff her? Yes. Is it smart to? No. It is just gonna create power creep. Like I said, that will literally just upsetty spaghetti people. Transform with a skill like Mel. That'd be interesting. I think, and you guys know my feelings on Mel, but I think the number one thing that upsets me about Mel's design is simply that she is actually gameplay dependent based off the ascension you have her in. And I don't like that. I think all characters should have their ascensions detached from gameplay for the most part. I don't mind the occasional trait here and there being a thing, because most of those types of traits are very one-off. But I would vastly prefer if you could just leave units in the ascension that you wanted them in and not have to worry about gameplay considerations of that. And to be fair, they know they effed up with that because, again, you look at like Barghest, you look at Ptolemy, like, you have characters that it either can be chosen not to switch them by depressing the skill, or you can switch them back and forth, and Mel cannot do either of those things. So I'm not saying that Mel needs a buff, but yeah. By people, you mean Korean Dark fans? Yeah, I'm sure Korean Dark fans would be upset, but you gotta consider like any other AoE foreigner would also be upset. Heck, at this point, I have used Kukulkan as a replacement for like AoE alter egos as well. Even though it's not the same niche. Can't use any of her cool third ascension costumes without breaking her. Yeah, and I think that's dumb, right? Like, I don't think there should be that limitation there. Okay, so chat, let's go over all the buffs. Well, does anyone remember what the last buff I went over with you guys was? Was it the Gilda Rays? Did I go over the Gilda Ray buffs? I don't think I went over Ku either. I think I stopped here. So yeah, it looks like we have a lot of them to do. So let's talk. Because we did not get to go over Ku or Leonidas. Okay. I did Ku if I remember correctly. Wait, yeah, I do remember asking Avalon just for the damage comparison. Yeah, and I did Leonidas. Okay. I just because I'm literally going to be doing a review, I'm skipping Bale. Yeah, Leo buff's just pretty nice for him. It just further cements him in what he's in. Ku, as you guys know, just actually already had a great kit, but giving him Buster up for 3 turns and Lawful Alignment for 3 turns on top of Charge and stacking Guts, like, it just took battle continuation from, like, well, this is a thing to, oh, holy crap, I think I'm gonna die. Okay, let's talk about the Gilda Rays. Oh, hold on. I have to remember which one's which. Yes, it's this one. So it's been so funny watching Gilda Ray Saber because he's been the epitome of like one of the most useless units in the game. And I really do mean that, guys. Gilda Ray has never quite had a niche and had a use. Still, even now, I'm not really sure he does have one. But I think I can at least say that they're at least trying to give him his own like self niche of, hey, I love the Janus. And that's exactly what they kind of keep going for. You guys can see his first skill had already been buffed to have lawful alignment, good alignment, and star attribute buffs. Now his second skill is coming back in, and it's basically being changed from just 3 turns of NP Gen up for himself of 45%, which ultimately is like, it's not actually a bad percentile. The fact is, though, he's an arts unit that needs a 45% NP gain buff, which is a little bit terrifying. So they go ahead and they say, okay, we're going to increase this just to a solid 50%. Why not? We're going to increase the generation rate of all allies with lawful alignment, which he himself does have. And basically increase that for 3 turns by an additional 50%. So I want you guys to understand something. They literally said, hey, it's okay if we give him 50% more NP gain, it's not going to break him. That's kind of crazy if you think about that. Just out of nowhere, they're like, yeah, double it. And he doesn't already have a bad, like, base NP gain rate to begin with. So, kind of funny, honestly. But, so then they come in and they say, let's increase the healing received of allies with good alignment for 3 turns. Now, he's not somebody that does any healing, okay? That's essentially a, like, moot point for him, but it's because he's just designed to fit alongside other people. So, he is going to be a good, like, support character now in a good aligned team. And that's really what you're seeing. That's what they're trying to make him be, is this low star, kind of weird hybrid unit. Because again, this is going to go pretty far. The problem is, well, yes, this does increase him as well. There's no guarantee that everyone in your party has good alignment. So if one of the units that you put in doesn't, that unit's going to be receiving less healing overall if you're doing blanket healing across the board. So that's something to watch out for. If an ally with the John Traitor Star attribute is alive on the field, it'll charge his own NP gauge 100%. Now, I need you guys to understand. They doubled his NP gain when he already had 0.82 and a 50%. And they gave him 100% charge. I do agree with people saying his NP needs an interlude. But this is just telling you right now, they don't care if they interlude it. Even if you interlude it and then interlude it again, it's still not going to be a threat. And that's why they're letting you have it, like, just so easily. I need you guys to stop for a second and consider something. He has 100% NP gain for 3 turns. 100% increased healing received. And 100% charge if John or a star attribute unit is on the field. On a 6-turn cooldown. This skill would normally be like 10 turns on someone. At best, like 8. So this is just literally them telling you, like, go ahead, use him. We know no one is. That's really what's going on here. Now, the other interesting thing to denote, there are some particularly interesting star attribute ladies that are not John. So you can at least use this to just basically get Gilderay to his NP. The problem is, his NP just sucks. Like, more than anything, you're going to be using it for the critical stars. There's really, honestly, no reason to use it otherwise. It's not a good deal unless you're somehow setting Gilderay up for being the carding unit himself, right? And for that, they still have his 3rd skill. It's okay. And you might be thinking like, whoa, 40% Buster up for 5 turns? That's kind of crazy, Cad. Well, unless they give the man to, like, unless they give him, like, Dragon Core and he has the ability to turn all of his cards to Buster, this is really still just not a threat. He's a 3-star. Like, I'd actually be really curious to see if, like, somebody's got, like, a 120, like, 3k foe Gilderay Saber and, like, just starts popping all the buffs on him and just, like, he probably can still do some crazy numbers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it just is the way it is. So yeah, basically, Gilderay Saber gets pretty much as strong as a buff as anyone could get, and it still just doesn't matter because Double Phantasm sucks. So until they buff his Double Phantasm, you guys don't really have to pay attention to him too much, unless you want to use him in these supportive capabilities with his 1st or his 2nd skill. That's really all it is. And is it worth more than taking an additional support? No, it's probably not. So that's his buff. Next up, we have Jill DeRay again. I know, shocking. Nobody predicted that it would be the Jill Inquisition. Jill DeRay has been interesting. I actually didn't think they were going to buff him again, just because I feel like he has gotten buffs, and I still feel like they don't know what they want to do with him. And this third skill, to me, kind of shows that it's an alright buff, but I still think they're struggling to give him true identity. So you guys can see, they took his third skill that used to just be his terror, 1 time, 5 turns, 40% max activation chance, with that being the only thing that actually levels up. And they basically say, okay, he's still going to have that, but now it's also going to inflict Curse of 500 damage for 5 turns to them, reduce their defense by 20% for 5 turns, and increase his own damage against enemies with Curse status for 3 turns. I was talking with Avalon, I was like, man, I kind of wish that they made this, like, party-wide, but they just gave that to Mephisto. So I do understand why they wouldn't do this. They're not just going to start throwing out curse modifiers on everybody and allowing you to form this, like, super amp curse team just out of nowhere with low stars. So I get it. I sent a gift for Jill's in Discord before clearing the Helena 90-star node with cards. Jesus. Anyways, he's also going to grant himself a debuff on attack for 3 turns that essentially is going to inflict Curse of 500 damage for 5 turns to an enemy whenever they attack, activating first. And probably the most important thing here, it's going to charge his MP gauge by 30%. Now, normally we'd be like, well, that's on a 7-turn cooldown, so that's unapproachable. But as you guys know, the 5th append does in fact exist. Here's the devious nature of this. They actually should have reduced this cooldown to 6. And the reason why, and to be clear, chat, they did reduce the cooldown. It was 8. But they only left it at 7. Okay? But the devious part about this is, now if you want to, like, 3-turn with him, you have to get skill reloading. Which means you have to have the coins for a story-locked 3-star. Good luck. Better find a banner that he's on if you want that. That's the only way you're getting around that. So I do like this buff. It's nice. It could have been a little bit better in my opinion. But we'll see. They still have yet another frankly atrocious skill on Jill DeRay to tend to, so who knows? They have already given him the Noble Phantasm treatment at least, so there's some stuff going on there, but it's still a little bit of a weird scenario since he charges the MP gauge of foreigner allies. But I still want to see them give him one more buff, and hopefully it finally gives him some identity. That would be my main hope. Hello, Kimba. They want us to roll the story banner so bad. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. And they should know better. They have 10 years of data showing that people don't roll story banner. So, it is what it is. In a weird twist of fate, I was actually very surprised to see Himiko get the buff. I assumed that Himiko would not be it. And it's funny because Avalon actually predicted this, and I was surprised. I'm not going to say that Himiko couldn't have used a buff. I just didn't expect it. I thought it's like, she's still in a pretty good place. I don't think they necessarily need to. The hilarity for me is how this buff goes down. So for those of you guys that know Himiko, you know that Himiko is a little bit of party buster support, but mostly she's like a ruler form of Super Orion. And she's not necessarily as effective as Super Orion, but to me, that's the way I've always chosen to view her. She's a little bit selfish, a little bit party-oriented. But ultimately, it's all about manufacturing buster crits for herself or the party. Now, her second skill is the one that gets some love. It's the buster up for 3 turns, damage up against demonic enemies for 3 turns, and self-invincibility. And they actually improved this to add party charge of 30%, which is just kind of insane. I actually did not expect this in this regard. Like, even 20% I would have said, like, like that's okay, that's nice. But 30% this is yet like another challenger. I actually have to admit I do feel a little bit sad for Koyan of Dark here, because Koyan of Dark just like rolls out and is the game's first real like party support for Buster that does 30% charge. Is it not 30? No. It's 30 unless I'm insane. It is. Okay. Yeah. But like I said, so Koyami gets 30%. And she's one of the first ones that actually, and sorry if I didn't make it clear that I was talking about Koyan Sky of Dark, not Koyan Sky of Light. She is one of our first units that gets it. And then from there, you end up seeing like the buff to Merlin where he gets it. You start seeing other units come out and get it. And this is yet another one where all of a sudden now you have multiple options that can give 30% charge to a Buster environment. So this does improve Himiko's usefulness. This does give her some reason to be placed into a party. On top of that, they give her party critical damage for 3 turns of 30%. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. Like, it's not like 50% to the party, but still, I mean, people will take this over anything else. The thing I think is most hilarious about this is the complete and utter wasted itemization right here. Allow me to explain. If you exist in a Buster comp, you do have Koyan Sky of Light. You do have Merlin. You do have Oberon. Okay? And all of these characters have stars on demand, pretty much. Or they at least just help the party manufacture it. Even Himiko already helps the party manufacture it, because this is not 8 critical stars for 3 turns. This is 8 critical stars, 8 critical stars, and 8 critical stars for 3 turns. So it's 24 stars per turn on top of anything else that you generate or star bomb in. I gotta be honest, I actually don't know why they wasted more for itemization on more critical stars. I actually don't think she needed it in the slightest. So this is the one thing about this buff where I'm like, man, they should have done something else. It would have been so interesting to see what else they did. But I get it. I understand. So ultimately, at the end of the day, that one aspect of the buff is one where I think they could have done better. But this is still a really good buff, and it does at least improve her usability. Not that Himiko was like the hardest unit to use. She was a very self-sufficient unit. Kind of already had been. She still has 50% charge herself, and the fact that it's not exempting her from this charge means that she goes from being a 50% unit to now she's an 80%. Combine that with something like mana loading, and that means you're getting her Noble Phantasm right off the rip if you so choose. And that is something, because that means that you can pop this and get, depending on your NP level, anywhere from 30 to 50% Buster up for the party. That is a sizable and significant buff, and it does overcharge the party's gauge by 2 stages 1 time. Himiko already was an alternative to the like invincible comp that we had with Morgan Le Fay. You could use Himiko as a more defensive version of it. This just increases that capability. It's going to increase party's crit damage. It's going to increase party's charge. So it's going to make it easier for people to get back to their Noble Phantasms in that setup. So it's definitely a crazy setup to me. And I'm really surprised at this buff in that regard. Okay, chat. Next up, we have Jekyll and Hyde. and they decided to come in and buff Jekyll and Hyde's first skill. His first skill was attack up for 3 turns, 15%, and then if it was Hyde, it was increase his own attack for 3 turns of 35%. The key to understand about Jekyll and Hyde is that the skills are always better if you use them in Hyde, in his Berserker form. So the issue then is, how do you get him to his Berserker form? That's where some people were liking the fact that they gave him charge on this skill. Other people were not, because again, this was a skill where he originally got way more crit damage by putting him, or by popping the skill once you were in his Berserker form. So I think some people looked at this and said, like, no, I don't want more reasons to use the skill as Jekyll. That's less valuable. So it's an odd, like, conundrum that they've faced you with. Even his second skill, as you guys can see, is stun success rate, and that stun success rate actually tangibly increases if he's high. It is virtually useless. Virtually useless in Jekyll's form. In Hyde's form, you might actually be able to land that stun. So, coming back on this one, they increase the attack for 3 turns. Or sorry, they leave that as is. The party's critical damage is what they add in for 3 turns of 30%. And then party's critical star generation rate for 3 turns. And overcharge the party by 1 stage for 1 time 3 turns. But that's Jekyll's form. So this is a nice thing, but if we use it in Hyde, it's just a double up increase of his own attack. So prior to the way this used to be, if you guys remember, it was 15 if used in Jekyll and 35 if used in Hyde. Now it is 15 and 35 if used in Hyde. Only 15 if used in Jekyll. So essentially he gets to keep both. And it's going to increase his own damage against enemies with a man attribute by about 30%. So it's a nice power mod. I would say that would mean that it could affect MP damage, but he doesn't have a damage dealing MP, so it doesn't matter. And it's going to grant himself gut status 1 time 3 turns for 2000 HP, as well as his own buff removal resistance 3 times 3 turns by up to 100%. So this is, to me, a almost non-negotiable skill. Obviously, if you guys use it in the first form, it does have a little bit of party benefit, but truly, this is better off being used in Hyde's form. So, a little bit, I understand they're trying to keep the unit unique, and they're trying to keep its identity intact. They have got to figure out some sort of, like, better scenario for Jekyll and Hyde. I personally believe that if I were going to redesign him, the way I would do it is I would make it so that Jekyll and Hyde worked in a loop. Such that if you NP as Jekyll, it turns you into Hyde. If you NP as Hyde, it turns you into Jekyll. And what you do is you give the skills different effects for each form like they have, but you don't make them worse. You just make them completely different. So, monstrous strength is what it would be as Hyde, but it would be completely something else as Jekyll. And that's the way you can make it so that it fits a little bit more into, like, let's say his assassin playstyle as opposed to his berserker playstyle. So I truly believe that because they haven't done that, because there's no use for the NP when you're in the form of Hyde, you're in a weird spot. I mean, heck, at bare minimum, using the NP in Hyde should, like, heal him or something. It's just really, really weird that they don't have anything like that. So, to me, they've got to do better with Jekyll and Hyde. This is an interesting buff, but it still doesn't solve the problem that is Jekyll and Hyde. Next up, we got Vritra. Vritra, as you guys know, is a unit that desperately needed it. Desperately, okay? She had never been touched prior to now. And they took her third skill, which frankly is a pretty decent skill. The issue with it is that you are incentivized to pop this skill on turn 1 because you're getting NP gauge every single turn. It also has a 5-turn duration, so surely there's no problem with that. The problem is it increased the party's NP damage 1 time 5 turns, which meant that it was front-loaded in the case of Vritra. That's not good. That means you're incentivized to pop at turn 1, but you're also penalized for popping at turn 1 if you want your like third turn's damage to be at its maximum. So realistically speaking, you have issues here, plus the fact that she really did truly need the NP regen to help out her NP gain because it was not the best at 0.55, only having the 2 arts cards. So to me, I think they knew that this skill needed some adjustment, and they come in, and that's exactly what they do. You guys can see, it's still got the charge per turn of 10%. It's still got the 3,000 HP 1 time over 5 turns guts, but now it increases the party's NP damage for 3 times 5 turns. So no longer are you penalized for using this skill turn 1 because she needs this for looping purposes. So instead, this makes it so much better. On top of that, it does at least give you a little bit of leeway if you maybe have to delay and can't NP one of those turns for whatever reason. So I do actually like the open-ended nature of this design. It's also going to increase the party's damage against enemies with Sky attribute for 3 turns, a 30% power mod that can be applied to everyone. So this helps drop her into the same niche that Umu Bride had been covering. And then it's now going to charge the party's gauge by 20% on top of all of that. So if you remember, there was nothing there for that other than the party charge per turn. Now, instead, it's going to sit there and give 20% charge blanket right up front. And actually, hold on. Yeah, sorry, I was reading the party's MP damage, not the party's charge per turn. This literally was a only herself charge per turn. Still only herself, but now she has party charge of 20%. And that 20% will help her out. It absolutely is going to help her get going. It absolutely is going to save you potentially popping like a Castoria 20% up or some other support's charge skill until later. So it's very nice. I really like this buff. Does it make her tangibly better in damage? A little bit, yes, but I don't think it's going to really rock the boat in terms of like, do you take Vritra over another unit in that regard? But what this does help is it just makes Vritra a lot more usable and a lot like less of a hindrance compared to how she was. I think if you started comparing Vritra to some of the other AoE Lancers before, her damage numbers were atrocious. But now with this, her damage numbers are pedestrian. And we can at least set it up where maybe a potential buff down the line to something else could really help her out. Maybe she just gets a much needed MP interlude or something like that. So I do think this sets her up well to be in a much better space for a second buff. Do I still think she needs a second buff? Yes, I do. Vritra had fallen that far behind, and it was not a good thing that she had. So I do really like this buff. I think it's great, and it's a measured, decent buff that is exactly what she needed, but it is still not going to resolve every single issue. And, you know, when a unit fars that far behind, you can't reasonably expect one buff to do so. There are times where we've gotten super buffs that have done stuff like that, but I think those are rarer than people realize. Okay, next up we have Eric Bloodaxe. I know, you're all wondering who this is. You've never seen this unit because none of you have ever used it. Eric is, ironically enough, got one of the faster Noble Phantasms in the game, so I've actually used him quite a bit just for that reason. He's never been, like, the strongest Berserker out there, and you guys can see he didn't exactly have a great kit to begin with. So they take his first skill, that reduces one enemy's attack for 2 turns and their defense for 2 turns. And they just say, you know what? It's going to reduce their defense for 2 turns and increase it. That's it. They just added 15% more damage. I'm gonna be honest. This is just such a like garbage buff in that regard. They have at least given him a Noble Phantasm interlude. This is truly what he needed. Okay. So it's just increasing the amount of damage he deals. Now increases his critical star generation rate by 100% for 3 turns. This does mean if you can manage to like loop him somehow, you can get quite a bit of critical star generation going on. On a Berserker, that's normally not going to generate a whole lot, and also not going to soak a whole lot. So this is actually a pretty decent deal for him. Unfortunately, they decided to leave the demerit from the base NP in. That just is the way it is. But they do at least tweak his overcharge effect. You guys can see it increased his attack for 1 turn, activating first by 30%. Not bad, but this just means that cards after the NP did good damage. Otherwise, you didn't care. Now, it's a 3-turn buff of 30%, as well as his own critical damage for 30% for 3 turns. So you start to see this synergistic effect where he's going to generate more stars, he's going to crit harder with them, and his attack up lasting 3 turns means that if he keeps getting a Noble Phantasm off, he's going to keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Well, yes, they left the demerit in as a means of recognizing this, like, hey, he's the Berserker, he's dealing damage to himself, he's a glass cannon. They at least have stuck with the lore in that regard. So I do like this buff. I obviously think that the initial buff that they gave him simply just could have been better. I truly don't know what the heck they were doing, especially with strengthening 2. Remove his own debuffs and increase his own max HP for 3 turns. Yeah, it's nice that he has a heal, but you're still not really going to use him for anything. And this, at least now with the Noble Phantasm, gives him a little bit more staying power. I'd like to see him get like some sort of proper niche for himself, a time where I can say, this is when I use Eric Bloodaxe. So maybe that comes if they ever update the 3rd skill or the 2nd skill, but that's really what I'm looking for. Until then, it is the way it is. He's a very cheap, fast Berserker, and that's really what you guys are going to see yourself using him for overall. I don't think he's a bad unit by any stretch of the imagination. He's just a 2-star, and that's exactly what we expect out of a 2-star. So it is the way it is, but hopefully they give him another buff in the future, since he has been relatively untouched. And now we get to go over Romulus. That's right, I've debated you all. We're not going to go over Artoria just yet. We're going to go over Romulus first. Now, forgive me, I actually have to look up which one this is on Romulus. Because Romulus has gotten a lot of buffs. Okay, it's his guts. It's sad that I can't remember things like that, but it is the way it is when you have a unit that, again, I think his 2nd skill is the only thing that's untouched on him. Oh no, he hasn't gotten an MP interlude. I thought he had. I don't know why. Anyways, Romulus has already had a buff to his 1st skill that gave him 20% charge. This was huge for him. It just really, really helped out his usability for a unit that didn't stand out much on his own. He already had Imperial Privilege. That just is the way it is. And then his guts, that increased one ally's gut status for 1 time, 1 turn, as well as their buster performance by 30% for 1 turn, or at least up to 30%. Now we've changed it to where it's 1 time, 3 turns, increasing their buster performance for 3 turns, and it's 3,000 HP. And the buster up has at least got the increased duration. Also increases the party's attack for 3 turns by 20%, and the party's buff success rate for 3 turns by 40%, as well as the party's healing received by 100%. This is particularly interesting as, again, his MP's not going to heal you really. So what you're looking at is instead just a buff to his 2nd skill. This is, hey, we've increased the supportive capability of this attack. We've added, sorry, not this attack, the skill. We've added a 20% charisma on top of that. We've now made it so his Imperial Privilege triggers 100% of the time if we lure the skill, and heals him for 100% more. So instead of 3,400 healing, you're looking at 6,800 healing. That's really good for a unit that pretty much doesn't have much HP to begin with. Like, if you combine that with his guts, that's practically a full heal. So it's actually kind of nice where he's at this point. I do wonder a little bit, though. It's like they're trying to make the 3-star version of him stronger, because we do know that they've admitted in the past that it was a mistake to make him a 3-star, and that's why we have the 5-star version. They're coming back in and they're trying to make him stronger. The thing is I look at like Hector now and I'm like, why would I ever bother with Hector at this point? Like, this unit hits harder, does more for the party, and literally is just far more survivable than Hector is. And I think that's a little bit of a problem. So this, I felt like Hector has needed something for a while to stand out from Romulus, and this just puts Hector in the grave pretty much by comparison. So I would like to see them at least acknowledge Hector's existence again. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the way it is. This is not one that I had on my bingo card. I did not expect Romulus to be the 3-star that got a buff here. I think there were any number of other better choices for 3-star Lancer that needed the buff more. I'm not like upset about the buff. I think it's perfectly fine for Romulus to get one ultimately at the end of the day. I'm just surprised they didn't send this to someone far more needy, because I think Romulus is at least in a decent spot based off of his buffs in the past. So give Hector anti-Greek. Yeah, that's something you could do. Loki want a Carinus buff. They might at some point. I don't think you'll see something like an NP interlude, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up buffing his whatchamacallit. One of his skills. Roma skill 1 heals 8k now. That's true. I did forget about this as well. So he already had a 4k heal on this. So yeah, his healing received is just pretty nutty, and it's party wide and for 3 turns. So good luck bringing him down. Like, this just makes Romulus super tanky as a result, which I do feel like at least lends itself to the way this character is supposed to be. And again, I think it's fine. Like, I just am surprised at this point, because it's a great buff for him, but good lord, we have some 3-star Lancers that are dead in a ditch with the amount of buffs that Romulus and Ku have gotten now. Okay, chat. Who wants to talk about Artoria? Black Ray Looper will loop. Yeah. So Artoria, as I mentioned at the beginning of this stream, okay? There's been this weird perception about Artoria for a long time. A lot of people felt like Artoria was not good. And there's been points where I felt like Artoria needed a buff, but I don't think I've ever had a stance where I would say that Artoria was not good. Especially for the NA crowd. And for reference on this chat, on NA, Artoria started with her NP interlude in the game. Okay, so I've never felt like that was a big issue, but there were, like, back in the time period where we didn't have like accurate damage numbers and stuff, and people were kind of just flaunting things from like a raw spreadsheet even later on. People didn't really have the right idea about her. And even then I saw as the argument evolved to like, oh, like Salter's better than her. Salter's better than her specifically when you Grail Salter and don't Grail Artoria. So, like, it started getting really weird, and that's where I started noticing it's like there's just some people that don't want her to be good. It is the way it is. But ultimately, I've never felt like she was in a bad situation. She just probably needed some love kit-wise. And we've kind of seen that over the years. Like, they've given her 30% charge. They have given her Dragon Reactor and the ability to change all of her command cards to busters. So she has come a long way from the very pedestrian kit that she used to have. And now they've taken aim at the Charisma B that she has. This one's always been funny to me because I really would like to know the justification for her charisma being at B rank just based off the lore, but I'm not going to get too much into that. It's not like she's one of the most famous stories ever told and literally is like the archetype for like the romance of like knights and stuff like that everywhere. It's, you know, surely she didn't build Camelot and have the Knights of the Round all follow her due to her charismatic nature. Anyways, they saw fit to buff this. We had a while back heard, at least through the grapevine, that it was possible that they were going to buff this skill. I think we've been theorizing it for a long time as to what it might potentially be. A lot of people were thinking, oh, maybe we're going to get like Avalon added to her as part of like the outcome of Lost Belt or something like that. And you guys know the way the Lost Belt story unfolded instead. We ended up getting more focus on like Castoria and such. So, okay with the way things turned out over there. I just found this interesting. We did have a leak then later on, much more closer to recent times here, where it appeared like this skill was going to get a buff, and it turned it actually into a second like mana burst symbol. So we were wondering like, oh, is this buff actually going to just make her crazy or something like that? Like, is she going to get a second buster up? And I had theorized that like what they might do is, because she has buster up for one turn on her Dragon Reactor, that maybe what this would be that they would add like a buster up of like 20% or something and make it 3 turns. So definitely interesting in that regard. But they don't do that. That's not what happens here, and I was surprised to see that they went with something different. So at least that leak for this skill getting buffed, it was probably them testing the early stages of what this buff would be out, but it was not this actual buff. And we know that because it's changed at least the icon in that regard. It has stayed the same. So now we get Knight of Utopia EX. It's going to increase the party's attack for 3 turns by a whopping 30%. And this, I agree with. Like I said, I don't know that we needed 30% here necessarily, but the justification for her charisma being low lore-wise never made sense to me. I never really understood that. It's like literally she should have one of the highest charismas in the game based purely off of who she is. Still, 30% is a drastic increase. I think most of us would have expected them to just round it out to 20%. So now it's base 20% all the way up to 30%. But it's also going to increase the attack of Round Table Knight allies for 3 turns by an additional 20%. This is very similar to the buff that Artoria got. And we see that as a little bit here. There's some pretty crazy synergy now amongst the round table. And it's something that we had talked about before too. It's like, hey, you know, I'm really surprised that they didn't have like a round table specific buff. I remember uttering these words, and then out popped the Artoria buff, and now here we go with Artoria sometime after that where she has it as well. So I definitely like this. It's really cool. It does make me want to do like round table specific team comps and stuff, because I do feel like there's still going to be some synergy there and some real strength. And I would actually love for them to go back and revisit the original Knights of the Round Table. I know everybody loves the Tam Lin. I know some of you guys don't like the name for that. but basically the Fairy Knights. But I would love to see them revisit the original Roundtable Knights that the Fairy Knights are based off of, because to me, they are not nearly as strong as they should be lore-wise. Some of the Knights of the Round are true monsters in that regard, and they really deserve a little bit of a glow-up in that regard. So, still, this is now looking at us going from 18% attack up to now 50% attack up, because she is a Roundtable Knight herself. She will give herself that buff. Also, it's going to increase her own extra attack performance for 3 turns by a whopping 200%. So this is something that did not exist before at all in the skill. It's, frankly speaking, pretty nuts. Like, it's just kind of insane that they ended up giving this to her and allowing her this frankly insane capability, because we already had the ability to lock in all of our cards to Buster. So, assuming that you have her Noble Phantasm, if you have even 2 more cards, you can change them to Buster, and now you have basically a triple Buster chain. A triple Buster chain makes the extra attack stronger. So they've given a unit that has the ability to lock in Buster cards an extra attack enhancement of 200%. And obviously you still have the capability of enhancing it even further with things like her pen skill. So, kind of insane the more you think about it. That being said, someone was asking me earlier, like, hey, do you still want to do something like mana loading? And yes, I still think there's going to be times where you want to have the mana loading. Again, she has 30% charge, 30% with the 20%. That's just a nice synergy right there. But truly, this is a little bit insane in that regard. Then, on top of that, she's going to grant herself a buff on attack for 3 turns. This is going to charge her own MP gauge by 10% per enemy hit when attacking with Buster cards. And you'll look at the note, buff on attack buff affects her own Noble Phantasm and charges the NP by the number of enemies. So it is literally the Salter buff. No restrictions in that regard. It is just full on for 3 turns, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, I know some people are definitely big Salter fans, are like, what the heck, why are they giving this to her? And it's like, Salter and Artoria are functionally the same person. It's just 2 sides of the same coin. So I don't see a reason for them not to do it. I actually was really surprised that they buffed Salter as much as they did with that buff. Obviously, I like Salter, and it was a huge buff for her, and it was really awesome, but I think when they buffed Salter, they kind of screwed up, because they turned Salter into a Black Grail Looper, and Salter was already one of the stronger AoE sabers in the game as a 4-star. That catapulted her to the top of the list, because it just allowed her to touch Black Grail. It allowed her to be a lot more powerful, when this was a unit that prior to that, her best composition was starting from 60%. So it definitely added a ton more firepower to Salter. And while obviously on one hand I was happy for Salter to get that, on the other hand I looked at that balance-wise and I said, like, holy crap, they've got a rough road ahead for the rest of the AoE sabers to play catch-up. And that's exactly what they've done. Over time, we have seen them buff and buff and buff and buff and buff and buff and buff. The AoE Sabers are one of the most buffed departments at this point, just because of Salter's buff. So, I think, as good as the Salter buff has been, it naturally caused some friction there. And this is going to cause a little bit more friction, because this just takes OG Artoria and drops her right up yet again in terms of damage capability. Now, you guys know with Salter buff, there were some restrictions as to how that worked. It definitely depended on the number of enemies you were facing. The thing is OG Artoria does at least already have the capability of Black Grail looping without her. Technically, it's not true Black Grail, but you could do things like Rising Mud Rain, where all you needed was a little bit of overcharge, and that got the job done. So, this just really cements that capability as turning her into a Black Grail Looper, truly. And I think we've started to see that now that there is so much charge in the game that it becomes more of a factor of, can someone actually hit Black Grail capability? It's not about how much charge you have, it's about how do you work in a composition and can you touch Black Grail? Because if the second you can touch Black Grail, that is a huge damage spike that you get over every other unit out there in the game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them start doing things to mitigate the effectiveness of Black Grail down the line, where they start releasing alternatives and stuff so that other units are kind of helped to be brought up to that level. But we'll see. This is certainly something where they've said, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. So just a quick look here. This is Artoria's damage, self-buffs only. This is her raw damage, just so you guys are aware. This is her under her own power, neutral environment, no help from anyone else. And you're probably looking at this, you're like, I don't see what's so special about this, Cab. Yeah, this is damage numbers that we would be looking at normally for like a single target unit. That's why this is kind of insane. Normally I don't make a big deal about the raw numbers, but these are pretty darn good raw numbers, and it's not using a niche. There's no niche at play here. This is 100% all the time you will get these numbers. So that's pretty nutty. Normally when we start to see this stuff, it's because somebody has like a super effective modifier or something as an AoE. This is just strong. Okay. Up next here, you guys can see, this is Artoria using her fifth append, basically for the skill cooldown, a Koyan Sky of Light, a Waver, an Oberon, and a level 100 Black Grail. Why? Because you can get away with all of it. And behold, the pretty crazy damage spike there. At NP1, you get 605k, almost 606, without a niche. You can borrow the man niche from Koyan Skya, and the numbers just improve. Okay? That already is just kind of nutty, but then if you have the second and the fifth append, now we can use Koyan Skya of Light, Merlin, and Oberon. And again, as long as Merlin and Oberon are not in the front line at the same time, you're fine. So you guys can see, you guys can extend the damage capability even more. The real issue here is going to be that second wave dip. And there are things you guys can do, because Artoria is going to have so much charge. You are going to be able to mitigate that second wave dip if you truly have to. But it's something to pay attention to go, wow, that is really capable, obviously, on the third turn. Wave 1's no slouch either there, but what the heck is going on in Wave 2? And this is because of the one-turn duration buffs. It's why this buff, as insane as it is actually not game-breaking, is because Artoria truly doesn't have 3-turn durations on most of her stuff. If she did, good lord, this would just be insane. Like, imagine Dragon Core being 3 turns and being stackable in a Koyan Skya system. That's where you start getting pretty funny numbers. So I don't think they'll do that anytime soon, but who knows? At this point, FGO's been going on 11 years. Who's to say we won't see this in like year 15 or something like that? So pretty crazy to see, nonetheless, just the sheer amount of damage and firepower, the amount of spike that you get just having NP2, and obviously as you go up to NP5, just the sheer number output that you guys can do. Now, for some comparison here, just here is Lord Logress. And I've talked to you guys about this before, that like Logress is very good. Logress has an amazing kit, but Logress's damage is actually not that crazy until you start considering in things like threat to humanity that start actually giving it super effective modifiers and letting the damage just skyrocket. Okay? And then here is if we're only using our front line. So, Lord Logress, Waver, and Oberon. And the sheer amount of damage capability we can do. So this is without a plug suit. This is level 10 Halloween royalty being used. Here is Artoria, frontline only as well. Normally we don't bother to show you guys this because we try to give you guys a depiction of plug, because plug is just how you're going to get the most damage. But we're dealing with a situation where we don't really have to care anymore. There's so much charge rolling around that unless you just actually need to min-max the damage, you're going to get very respectable, very nice numbers. Again, these are in composition numbers, but they are still neutral. So that means if Artoria is effective, let's say it's facing a Berserker or a Lancer, you get to double these numbers. And this is using level 10 Atlas code. Okay? The same thing with Logress, same thing with all of these numbers that I have shown you guys. Artoria's numbers are going to get pretty disgusting. And an example of this that we can show you guys is Avalon sent this to me earlier, but it's a thread on Twitter here from Silvermoon. And this was in the Saber Grand Duel. It's a triple buster chain with the extra attack. And I need you guys to understand that these damage numbers that you guys are seeing are because Artoria's extra attack is 3 hits. So these are just one of the hits. So you start looking in the realm of like 2.5 million here. And that's the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people are only going to look at like the NP damage numbers from Saber. You guys need to understand, while Saber can't specifically lock her own cards in, if she gets her cards, it's a buster chain. And if she gets a buster chain, there's not going to be much in the game that's going to live through it. And that's the thing I'm trying to point out to you guys, is that we have another Ishtar-like situation on our hands. Where it's just going to be pretty dumb at this point. Like, yeah, you can do good damage. You can do almost single target levels of damage with the NP. But you're just going to shred anything else that manages to live. To be honest, I like how they focus on cards from time to time instead of always NP. Yeah, I agree. And that's like the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of people will miss the forest for the trees in this buff. They'll only look at the looping expansion and Black Grail numbers. This buff is insane because it's both NP damage and looping capability and carding power. So, truly, you guys need to understand, yes, that is not a crit. That is an extra attack, which cannot crit. So, please understand, the damage buff here, pretty nutty. I am excited for it. I am happy. I do think putting it all into context and understanding that you did have Logress outshining her, but now things are a lot closer. So basically, NP1 Artoria in her optimal plug comp can beat Logress in her optimal plug comp now. NP2, Logress scales better and can catch up to Artoria's new damage. Even gains a couple thousand of damage on top. NP3 through 5, Logress again just scales better, so she'll have an edge. That being said, it's not that big of one. And obviously, if you're facing man attribute enemies, Artoria will win, given she's Earth, so you get an additional 10% bonus. But essentially, it really is just an overall usability. Logress is a little bit easier to set up and use. But ultimately, both versions of her are just super capable at pumping and amping damage. And there is no reason you cannot use them alongside of each other in that regard. Because remember, Artoria's buff here is going to give Logress 50% attack up. That is nothing to sneeze at. Single target archer and sabers have gone bye-bye then? I'm not gonna say single target sabers have gone bye-bye, but yeah, I mean, we've been at that point where both the AoE sabers and AoE archers have long been so roided out that you have to have very specific reasons to use the single target of either of those classes. Lancer nodes get face card farm with triple saber now? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You could do like double Logress Artoria, or you could do double Artoria Logress. Heck, oh, what's that? Is there a wave that has an archer enemy? Okay, Artoria, Lartoria, Artoria. Yep. Well, keep in mind, Bob, at least as of right now, because of the synergy with Waver, you're using usually another Waver instead of a second Koyanskaya now in Artoria comps. And that's really interesting because part of the reason that that's possible is because Artoria has 5-turn skills. She might not have skills that have multiple turn durations for the most part, but she has very low cooldowns. So things like having the 5th append to reduce it, having a single Koyanskaya means that 5 turns go down to 4 with the 5th append, and it goes down to 2 with a single Koyanskaya, which means you can get back to them in a same thing. So that starts meaning that there is more attack up already bouncing around there, and it's a very interesting thing because it becomes more of a like, how can you spread the buffs as evenly as possible for the multiplicative effect? And it's very intriguing. But I do agree, I think for like standard Buster looping, you don't see as much Waver, you see a lot more Koyanskaya, and that's a thing. Actually, I don't know. Avalon, do you happen to have the Salter numbers handy? I did not look at the Salter numbers in comparison yet. I'm sure they're somewhere back in our DMs. Hey, chat, there's Salter. Okay, that's the same one he posted. It's one of the few where, like, it's perfectly labeled in our DMs. Salter's numbers look similar to Logress. Well, here, let me give them to you guys side by side. These are the frontline only comps. Okay, so here's Logress. You're looking at 460, basically, and then 575 if we're doing her best possible comp, which requires Oberon to have his A5 for shenanigans with the cooldowns. Salter's looking at 465, best case scenario, right? And then Artoria is 605. Now, the thing to keep in mind is this is only looking at MP1. So Artoria is 605, 610-ish, 757, 762 at MP2, right? Logress at MP2 starts getting really fucky. Okay, her best comp does in fact catch up. Salter is a little bit left behind unless it's man. Man is her true niche, so it is the way it is. And there you guys can see NP5 there at 555, 709. So yes, Salter is both a factor of rarity and just not receiving as many buffs over time. And before somebody in the audience screams that Salter needs a buff, I love Salter, but no, she does not. She does not need one. She is already head and heels over every other 4-star and still better than most of the 5-stars. Logress literally has 1.5k more attack out of the gate. That's why the scaling is that hard. Yeah. And it just is the way it is, right? Like, but I at least feel confident that there's some differentiation between the two, at least kit-wise. So I think this does give you a reason to use like Artoria over Logress and vice versa. So I'm okay with the numbers being where they are at. I don't have any issue between Logress, Salter, and Artoria right now. I think they are balanced amongst themselves. Compared to the other AoE sabers, are they balanced? Oh hell no. Oh hell no. They're much, much stronger than most of the other options. Yeah, we never factor Grails in. So, like, this is not considering Salter being at, like, level 90, for instance. What about Proto-Arthur? I mean, I can show Proto-Arthur. Since he did just get his upgrade. There's Arthur. Now, that does require his A2 and his A5. And hilariously enough, and this is what's so crazy about Arthur, and we've pointed this out before too, this is using cranking, chat. So, what you guys see is Artoria is our new, like, no real niche baseline at, like, 600. Some of these other units can outscale her if their niches are in play. And that's kind of the way things should be. Need a buff charge battery? They could buff MHXA. It's just not in the damage department. That's some nice damage. Yeah, I think a lot of people did not pay attention to Arthur's buff, but I've been saying it for years that if they ever actually gave Arthur an MP interlude, that this is what would happen. That Arthur's numbers would be very good. Part of the reason why, and I don't know if chat remembers this, there was a period in time where Arthur was tied for the highest attack power amongst all sabers. So, similar to what we were just discussing with Logress being so good at scaling because of her just latent attack power, that's exactly what happened with Arthur. people questioned that. I think the issue was that was kind of hard to see because it was predicated on Arthur getting an MP interlude and Arthur having charge that worked in a 3-turn system. And back then, he had neither of those. So it was a bold assumption to assume that he would get both when the devs really just didn't pay much attention to him. And then he got both. And that's where we're at right now. The masses have a habit of being meta-rotted. The masses do have a habit of being meta-rotted, but the masses also have a habit of just being kind of ignorant. So it's like they think they're meta-rotted, but they're actually not even knowledgeable on the meta. And I'm not saying that to like insult people, it's actually been the truth that I've seen over the years, is that it's very frequent to notice that people often quote wrong numbers or have like really weird takes based off of extrapolated information, and they like they dig in and entrench, and it's like this is their hill to die on, and it's like really don't need to. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what the takeaway should be here, chat, is who is your favorite? Artoria, Logress, Salter, or Arthur? Maybe it's not one of these. The point is, at least these 4 are very good performing. And you should not feel bad about picking any of the 4. And that's fine. Even if you're not going to pick one of these 4 as your favorite, like, Saber, or your favorite AoE Saber, you're still fine. We're at least seeing that the devs in this current cycle are revisiting units that truly needed upgrades. And that's, I have to give them some credit where it's due. It is so clear to me that the devs actually have like realized the need to buff these. And therefore this anniversary, while it maybe didn't have the most like stellar upgrades that we've ever seen, it certainly almost all to AT went to units that needed them. I think we have like 2 probably that we can say got it that didn't necessarily need the upgrade. There's literally just base Artoria pre-buff with Giant instead of Charisma. Yeah, and it's just that niche was not a common niche. Artoria needs a buff to make her skill 2 work like Salter's buff. It would buff all Buster Servants. No, they can't do that. Because obviously if they do that, then think of what that does to Salter, right? Like, I'm not going to say that like you can't buff Koyan in some way. But I'm going to say it's like they can't have a one-size-fits-all that just makes every Buster unit into a Black Grail Looper. That will really mess up the game. It's the same with people wanting, like, NPs to be able to crit or get, like, double the NP gain or something like that. It's like all of a sudden units that are ridiculously good at NP gain are just, they're so good they don't know what to do with it, and there's no advantage to them having it. So it instead turns them into being a terrible unit by comparison. All of them can situationally be the best now. Yeah. It feels after finishing part 2, they unwind and start to deviate from the meta stuff, limited servant stuff. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's just that they realize that the game has staying power and that they don't maybe need to power creep to keep players' attention in the game. That what players actually do want is just for their favorites to be maintained. Like, chat, I'm going to pick a servant. Just random freaking servant. Let's go in. Let's pick Ryder. Okay, I'm going to say Ivan the Terrible. If we pick Ivan the Terrible is someone's favorite. Do you think if Ivan's your favorite, you're upset if Ivan is not the best unit in the game? I do think there are some people out there that are like that. But I think by far the more upsetting thing to most people is when Ivan the Terrible is not competitive. When Ivan the Terrible is instead like bottom of the barrel, struggles to even be used. Oh. Thank you. So hold on, chat. I have to show this off. So I have a cookie delivery. Oh, I just dropped a cookie. I got a cookie delivery from my wonderful girlfriend. These look delicious. They do look delicious. I'll have to taste them. Mmm. Mmm. They're very good. Did they just come out of the oven? I don't know. They're warm and gooey, which is exactly what you want. But better, like, so we got this new like we got like a green pan like ceramic like baking thing, and I assume that's what you made it on. So like it made the edge of the cookie ever so slightly like overcooked. So it's got that like crunch. So it's like it's both soft and gooey and crunchy. Because my girlfriend is an amazing cook and baker. And I love her. What stream is this? Don't worry about it. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is, yes, some players might get upset if their favorite unit is not the best. Okay? But I think the far more upsetting thing is when their unit is terrible. When their unit is le terrible. Okay? Like, that's what's actually going to piss players off. Is when they feel like their unit can't compete, can't operate within the system, can't actually be a good unit, and everyone gives them shit for using it and for it being their favorite. Ever since that one time Squirtle got one, you're right, Squirtle should get another buff. You should get an MP interlude. And I say this as straight up as I possibly can. Squirtle deserves an NP interlude, and if you think otherwise, you're wrong. Turn her from Squirtle to War Turtle, yes. But John needs the buff first. I mean, I'm not going to argue that John doesn't need a buff. And I've said this before, I think people get stuck on arguing buffs, and it becomes this, like, zero-sum game of because Unit A got a buff, Unit B can't get a buff. And so it's like everyone gets at each other's throats, and it's like it's not. I'm arguing for so many units in the game to get buffs. Maid Alter needs a buff. Maid Alter could definitely use like a quality of life. Like she could use like charge or charge per turn or something that just infects her NP gain or her survivability. Like there's any number of things you could do to help her out. My favorite is Jekyll. I'll take anything I can get, both an animation update and a buff this year. I'm happy with this. Exactly. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, right? Like, I have watched people argue against buffs purely out of, like, bias for years, and I never really understand it. Like, chat. Let's go in. Let's get sabers. Obviously, I think we can say these two don't need a buff. That needs a buff. That could probably use an NP interlude. Sumai's in a weird spot. I think he's actually just very strong at what he does, and I think his niche is still very good. I'm not going to talk about the 3-star. Altera's still relatively good. If they buffed her in some other like quality of life way, I'd be okay with it. Mordred could probably use a damage buff at this point. Like, and I say this because she kind of was scraping at the bottom with Arthur there for a while, which is pretty insane because Mordred has had buffs that have helped her overall damage output. We've just gotten some pretty insane ones. Unfortunately for Shiki needs another buff because Muramasa got a buff. And Shiki has a lot less viability than Muramasa does. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and stump for my boys in the Knights of the Round. They actually do need some love. Oh, I'm aware Shiki can loop chat. I'm talking purely from a damage standpoint. When you have, and this is the unfortunate thing, and I'm not saying this to people that are fans of Muramasa to like piss them off, but when you have a unit like Muramasa that has the totality of the kit that Muramasa does, he basically does need to be on the lower end of damage output. So unfortunately, the fact that he actually passed a bunch of them is not a good thing. Because it really does hurt the usefulness of comparative units. Erd did push her a lot? Okay, then I will withhold judgment until I at least see those numbers. But, at least as of right now, my initial assessment is that she does. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm a sim for my girl, but she needs a buff? Oh yes, absolutely. Sigurd probably still needs another re-examination, probably a skill upgrade. I don't think Lakshmi's ever had a buff. Okay. I was wrong. Alright, they gave her the quick up. Lakshmi could use an NP interlude if nothing else. Like, I'm gonna say this. If you weren't released in the last, like, 2 to 3 years, and you don't have an NP interlude, you could use an NP interlude. Almost across the board. There are some exceptions, chat. I know one of you is about to scream them at me. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of those exceptions are probably extra classes. Yeah, Dioscuri we already talked about. Tomoe Gozen, I agree, like, even still, she could get another one. Murmos is in a good spot for himself. I'd have to look at Charlemagne and Okitan, see where they stand at the current point in time. They probably could use a little bit of a buff. Richard absolutely needs one. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'd have to see Kondo's numbers again, too. It's been a hot second since I've seen them. Like, I know he's primarily a buffing unit, and that's, like, still a little bit weird. Kondo's just a Muramasa clone, it's so lame. That's kind of my point. Like, you end up in these weird spots sometimes with some of these units. Yes, Ibuki, and did I, like, skip Ibuki? Because I was 100%, like, waiting for her. Ibuki is the poster child of needs a buff, and she will scale well if she gets one. There she is. That's why her artwork is so elaborative. My eyes just keep going over it. But yeah, chat, like, easiest way to bring Ibuki back into the fold, just give her an MP interlude. You don't even have to try that hard. It would just immediately make Ibuki pop off due to her damage scaling. So, again, what I'm trying to say is, your units are not so far away from being good. They just need, like, one decent buff in most cases, and they're back in the running. Is that buff in some cases going to need to be a pretty strong buff? Yes, it very well might. But it is the way it is. Chat, I have some catching up to do. We've been going over so much from Anniversary. I still have some rank ups and some interludes to do. But ultimately, we're in a good spot right now. However, I'm running out of time. I have 1 day left. So, as much as chat wants this to be OC2, I realize we have to go do OC3. Wait, that's not the right thing. I don't want to go there. Oh yeah, I also... Chat, help me remember, tomorrow we need to do the CQ for NA. I keep forgetting it's there. I'm completely done with the event other than that. Okay, so chat, this is just literally going to be the next 5 chapters, so we're probably going to finish section 2 and start, like, section 3 by 1 pip. Purely because I have to do it for the reward. Okay. Going to end song request, gonna turn on our music. Gotta do 5 arrows, yep. It's so funny because I've never run up against these ever before, but just because I'm behind on OC2, I'm now like having to balance this and the summer event, which at least now I'm not having to balance the summer event. So where last we left off, they were running in Dubai, trying to get away. And it looks like Ereshkigal has woken up. Isn't it 5 arrows in OC3 part 2 and not just OC3 in general? I think it's just 5 arrows in OC3. Because that would be really effed up if it weren't. Moon Dubai, BB Dubai, and the final boss of humanity's Annihilation Showdown. And chat, you're actually getting 4 streams from me this week. I got Kiki to agree to it, because she wanted a day where she could come on stream with me. Because I know she hasn't been able to since she played Donkey Kong. And we're pretty decided that we're not going to play Donkey Kong on stream again, because it just... I don't feel like that was very entertaining for you guys. It was kind of a repetitive game a little bit. Okay. Now we're gonna go with manual setup because clearly this calls for Garcher. Calls for Jarcher first of her name. Actually, chat has advised me to keep taking Invincibility Pierce, so that's exactly what we're gonna do. I don't have a Mystic Code that needs to be leveled anymore. But this is still a pretty decent Mystic Code, so we'll go with that. Also, Chad, let me know if it lags. It shouldn't, but you never know. Oh, man. I am very glad that I took it after all. Part 2 mentioned in the name just refers to the clear support campaign and not the OC3 part. Okay. Rayless, thank you for the 71. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for all you do for stream. I appreciate it, my dude. Thank you for keep coming back and supporting me. This OC has a lot of did you bring in Vuln Pierce? Yeah. Or wait, was that OC2? Was it OC3 or was it OC2 that you guys were telling me to take in Vuln Pierce on? I don't know why, but I just had that strong feeling like I should take it. Is it OC3? Okay. And it's funny because I did it on JP. I just truly don't remember. I'm gonna assume I just have to break his bar. So we're just gonna go with the Noble Phantasm into the Brave Chain. Wait, does my John have a curse command code on her? Still not a fan of OC1. I still thought OC1 was pretty decent, but I do agree that the story could have been written and explained better. But like, I didn't hate it by any stretch of the imagination. The problem is he has Invuln Pierce if memory serves. Okay, good. I was gonna say, there's no way it's gonna make me take out, like, 3 freaking bars of health with a 3-unit roster. I'm a wild Roland who tumbled straight out of the throne of heroes. So he wants them to strip. Oh god. I did not expect, like... And it's so funny because it is like Moon Rabbit is basically the outfit name, if I remember correctly. Like, he is Space Astolfo. It's my GSSR, don't remind me. Recommendations for the 30 million download ticket? I do not. I've talked about it several times on stream, though. I might make one. But it will depend. Of course, Astolfo's gonna have to kill us. It just makes sense, chat. You're the only protein sack here. Damn. I just like the straight face that Bartholomew had there. He's like, is he actually stupid? Yes. The answer is yes. Oh, so I have to take a ruler here. Oh. Bring OG John, she gets bonuses, does she? Well, thanks, Astolfo. Hmm.
ピンチチャンスにオルテナウス疑似リンク回一歩前に了解僕はやるぜ僕はやるぜ 神明東映保管これは多くの道
She negates the stun. Interesting.
証明せよロードキャメラット噛み砕かれる有効レンジ
Is that stun just permanent? Cause like, holy shit. I don't think it's gonna matter. I forgot he is Voyager, so this is literally just set up for Bunny if I possibly can. Hey, at least Astolfo's doing nothing to Artoria. This is now a gamble, though. Don't you dare, Astolfo. Hmm.
そうですね。そのように。そうですね。これでどうだろう。光を。カードの真髄。
Super Astolfo have sure hit. Bro. Yeah, we're pulling out of that. That actually is just upsetting to me. Mostly because I'm forced to take, like, those other two units. I assume even if I take a craft essence that negates the stun, I cannot entirely negate the stun. Okay, Astolfo has MP seal. Does have evasion, but surely that would never happen, right, chat? John's a Saberface? I'm aware. I just happen to know that I did it on JP with Bunny.
僕はやるぜ。僕はこれでどうだろう。
I wonder if it always stuns the third slot, though.
決まったね。オルテナウス、疑似リンク解除。時短、装填済みです。ビヨーン。
It's only rulers. God damn it.
高らかに。いつか必ずなくしたものに報いるために。導きの星よ。力となれ。差し込む。シャチの突撃。チェック。せーの。程度。あら。程度。了解。よしよし。これでどうだろう。
Yeah, see, that's what's scary, is the, like, super buffs that Astolfo gets. Jesus.
たまには海賊らしく行くか。時短、装填済みです。一歩、了解。ビヨーン。どうやら貴殿は気づいていないのかな。すでに包囲されていることに。ブラックダーティーフロンティーハウリング。ストップ。ブースト。ストライク。チェック。
Okay.
メカくれよ。チェック。せーの。ピンチ。チャンスに。
98%.
オルテナンス。戦機の解放。了解了解。これでどうだろう。有効レンジ。マッシュウォーター。これで。
Okay, that's good, unless he gets, like, invuln and pierce from the bar break. We're already ahead of where we were last time, I think.
これでどうだろう。月を見上げるウサギとて理性のない時もある。いくぞー。ブルカーノカリゴランテ。チェック。あらよ。最大ダメージお任せください。誰であり前に。
Hey,
ブーストストライク。おごりであっても
You became crazy after going to the moon, yeah.
いつか必ずなくしたものに報いるために。導きの星よ。力となれ。ブーストストライク。バーニア突撃します。ターッチ。ガリガリやるぞ。あらよ。程度。
98%. Fuck you, Astolfo. No one likes you.
バーニアの力をお見せしよう。さて、カードはどういうか。
Dad, is he gonna instant charge if I bar pop him? That's the only thing I need to know here. He just buffs himself? Okay. I think it just ends. Oh, does it? If so, that's funny.
Hi. そうですね。そのように。そうです。僕はやるぜ。僕
僕はやるぜ。光のカードの真髄お見せします。僕はやるぜ。僕はやる。チェック。
I feel lied to.
チェック。程度。 了解。一歩前に。時短装填済みです。ビヨーン。はあマシュモーター。ふっバーニア突撃します。さあせーのガリガリやるぞ。入ってバリーの力をお見せしよう。
I need to take the NP damage one off of her. It doesn't actually help the damage.
輝きは空に陸に海に。
Oh, I forgot I have T.
いいえ輝きは人にこそ。
Sorry, it's okay, Bob.
カードはどういうか良い勝負でした。
I was just trying to make an informed decision because it did my button choice did matter, but truly that's why I asked the question I did. I didn't care if it went on for another bar or not. I just cared whether or not he NP'd me. Yeah, Bunny didn't have Sweet Crystal there. Bunny had whatchamacallit. And yeah, that's true. I probably could have just dealt with it. I just wasn't sure that the NP was gonna kill outright. Is he famous? Jesus, are those all command seals? No, something's gonna happen. They're gonna get interrupted. Yep. Considering this is the after battle scene. Got turned into roadkill. It's her. Irony, since JP's summer probably deals with King Protea. Ace guy? No, Roland just got smushed, I'm pretty sure. Man just got bonked on the head by a giant. That means Passionlip, King Protea, Khazra Drop, and BB are here. Literally the only one we're missing so far is Melt and Violet. And I'm willing to bet. Once and for ah? I would hope it's Vinny and Malter. I really hope we don't have 2 of the slots taken up by King Protea. Not that I have a problem with King Protea. I just really hope that it's not 2 slots for 1 unit. God, they're just getting knocked around. What's her relationship to us? Yep. I knew it. This is the greatest mystic I've ever seen. By your beautifully enchanting eye. It's interesting that King Protea seems to not know what's going on. Because I would assume that BB would just yeet her. Get ready to be a boss fight. Oh. I wiped them all out. See, it makes sense though. Like, BB Dubai has to be stronger than her. Oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. She's zoned out. Oh, she gonna drop us. $17 hours? That's the case of narcolepsy, right? It's nap time. Yeah, there's no way we're gonna be able to beat Roland. Oh. Yeah, can I please start using people other than Bartholomew and MASH? I'm sorry. Hold on, chat. No. Mad Roland Naked Death Dubai. That is the name. Okay, chat, it's Artoria time. Has to be weaker than King Protea? I guess, yeah. Oh. So, we're gonna have to fight for our right to, instead of party, sleep. Anyone with a meat body. Lord Thomas, they must mean Thomas the Tank Engine. Once this conversation is over, do you catch my drift? So we need to keep conversing with them. Still human at heart. I don't know. I don't know that hospitality makes them human. Even though you're no longer mortal, you still have humanity. Soul. 46 units. Oh boy. Returning to Area F. The F stands for F me. Have you heard of a supermarket called Jungle Jim's International Supermarket? I have not.
行くぞドンスタリー最果ての光清掃抜病行きます
Don't worry, you don't have to kill all of them. Yeah, I assume it's just these. Or it's gonna spawn more. Okay, that's evil, but whatever. I did not play that right. I heard Artoria got a buff, woohoo. Well, Artoria got a buff, not Artoria. The damage chart, the one that was on screen. The one that I showed off is internal calculations that we do for our videos. Okay. If I had 1 more %, I would be fine. I sadly do not, so let's try to break the last one right here. That should be all we need. Oh, you piece of shit! Okay, that's just evil. Oh, that's so evil. I hate it. I hate it. I actually hate it. What the hell? Oh, that's so evil. Oh, it's just... It's so mean-spirited. I was like, oh, I've played this perfectly. I'm just 1% shy. And the game's like, ha, got him. So much for min turning. How much? He just got 2 turns, but he's got 2 turns of self-repair, so she literally has to get to her Noble Phantasm. Oh, wait, what? Okay. We're gonna guts her just in case. I didn't equip her with Invul and Pierce because I knew she had it on her NP. And I was like, oh, I just won't need it. I should have. I now regretty the spaghetti of my soul. With everything? This is why you need Invul Pierce. Like I said, she has another NP. I just didn't think to like actually hard equip it. Usually a unit that has invuln pierce, you don't need to bring an invuln pierce C for. This is one of those rare times where the devs are like, ha, got him. Why are some of them incredibly good, like Sabers, while others are just average at best? So usually, errata, I try to think like the developers do. And it's served me well over the years. I can't say that I've predicted like every buff or anything, I certainly don't. But usually I can tell what they're gonna buff, and I can tell at least an inkling of how. And it's because I kind of just try to put myself in their shoes and try to imagine what I would do if I wanted to keep the unit in line with other units of their type, try to buff them, try to keep them relevant, try to keep them worthy of attention. But that does change depending on the rarity of a unit and a unit's lore. This is one of those few games where they actually do seem to balance things based off the lore, regardless of how much we want to agree or disagree on it. And I think it's because Type Moon actually does weigh in on unit buffs. But, so like, for instance, I was talking about Mordred earlier in the stream, and one of the reasons that, you know, like, people have said, like, oh, Mordred needs charisma. And it's like, no, that actually doesn't fit the lore of Mordred. On top of that, it also doesn't, like, fit the idea that Mordred being Artoria's, like, child should technically be weaker than Artoria. To me, instead, what I saw them doing was giving her something to fit her volatile nature. And I was like, I bet they'll probably give her a crit damage buff. And that's actually, like, years ago. That is, in fact, what they did when I was, like, surmising this. But that's just one example of where, like, they're going to create a buff that fits the character. There have obviously been exceptions. Like, there's some times where they've done a buff and I'm like, this is not a great one. But I think that's where the devs maybe can either see things, like, into the future for what else they plan to do. So they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do a buff here, and then we're going to do another buff, like, for this skill there. And it's like, we obviously can't see what their whole plan is. Or, I think there's cases, like, for instance, I'll use an example here, like Osaka Behime, where I don't think the devs quite have a good idea of what they want the gameplay for Osaka Behime to be like. And that's why her buffs have seemingly been, like, all over the place. So it's like, I do think they have a general plan and idea for how to treat a unit, but sometimes they're unsure of how best to proceed. Mordred is deeply unlikable canonically. Charisma makes no sense. It's interesting. If you're talking like pure Arthurian mythos, I would agree. Mordred is generally an antagonist and an unlikable person. In the Fate-verse, in the Nasu-verse, Mordred is more likable, but only in the sense of being like a rebellious teenager. And you come to understand that it's not that Mordred did nothing wrong. Mordred still has agency and still is responsible ultimately for her own actions. But it's that Mordred was basically put into a, like, losing situation and just duped by her own mother. Okay, so we just have one more segment here, chat. Like Emiya's third skill. Yeah, Emiya's third skill has really been a weird one over time, and I think they've kind of, like, looked back at that and said, like, yeah, we buffed it, but we didn't buff it right. We need to buff it again and change how it works. So, she's also portrayed as very selfish, which is, it makes sense, right? If you guys think back to the fact Mordred is a homunculus baby that is actually 3 years old, that got, like, rapid aged up to being an adult. So, how selfish were you when you were 3 years old? Like, if anything, it's amazing that she can speak, right? So, I think it's just showing you, it's like, well, yeah, she is aged up to be, like, an adult, she doesn't have the, like, maybe the societal cues and the, like, maturity that, you know, you develop with experience over time to really be a true adult. I think there'll be a second round of buffs, I mean, for those who have already received buffs. For those who have already received buffs. So, like, you're talking, like, philosophically in the future, not, like, right here in the present. I could see them eventually, like, revisiting things. We already have cases of them giving out second buffs, so I don't see any reason to think that they couldn't. I do think it's entirely possible that they, at some point, start saying, like, here's a second buff to a skill. And then if, like, a unit has, like, so many upgrades or something down the line, maybe they start making some of the upgrades just permanent additions, where it's like, it exists now baseline for the unit. And if you already did it, you already got the benefit. But if you haven't done it, maybe, like, there's a chance to, like, earn it, like, through a quartz milestone or something like that. I don't know. That would probably go against their actual existing milestones, though. But I do worry that the game would have potential... Oh, God. Potential bloat down the line with, like, so many buffs and upgrades for a unit. Or just gets the advantage of an anime and FGO for hers. Yeah. FGO is notoriously slow at buffing units. You know, it's funny we say that. Like, I would agree in the general scheme of things that yes, it is. But if we compare it to, like, any other gacha game, no, it's, like, ridiculously fast. At least in the sense that most other gacha games don't do nearly as many buffs, right? Like, so it is what it is. I'm willing to bet that somehow the result of the story is going to be that we vote for ourselves. Or she's going to hope that everyone votes for her. But I feel like that's the only appropriate way, is that humanity wipes itself out. Ah, Koinskaya. The End, written and produced by BP Dubai. She was duped by proper human history. Into it at the end of the day, you can't really gather loyalty being a betrayer. Yeah. Oh, that's why, like I said, so it's like, you look back, it's like, does Mordred need charisma? It's like, no, Mordred didn't really have charisma. And I had talked about this, that if they wanted to do an upgrade, like, say, for Salter's charisma, they should treat it instead as, like, treachery or something like that, or, like... What? They should treat it as, like... Instead, it's like authoritarianism, where it's like she's ruling through, yeah, like through tyranny, through fear, rather than actual inspiration. So it's like they should change what the skill is with an upgrade, rather than continuing to call it charisma. I like how now they're forcing you to notice it, as if somehow you could have not. I don't really want to see proper human history, Ruler Morgan. Yeah, technically, as Bob is saying, she would actually be a caster. She's a beast! I need to figure out which way is evil. How they handled Vulture's charisma skill, if you think about it. She would buff members of the Wild Hunt, but actually demotivate ordinary people. Yeah, and I talked about that too, that, like, to showcase, like, fear or something, it should be that, like, it instead of increasing your ally's attack, it should reduce your enemy's defense or something every turn. Like, that would be a way of handling it. Used to save Camelot, yeah. Well, it's also just in general to get the Holy Grail, the quest for the Grail. It is in and of itself, like, it's the idea that, like, the journey is worth more than the destination. In questing for the Grail, you are trying to prove that you are worthy, that you are holy and pure. And often what we find out is that that is not the case. Okay, so let's use Artoria. And I might regret this, but let's use Morgan. Speak of the devil. Oh, I have to use Mash. Damn it. Yeah. And I'm gonna go with Morgan just so I actually have a hard unit here. Man, Mysterious Astronaut. I have 6 enemies remaining, several of which have evasion. I'm actually hoping that she doesn't outright kill that middle one. Perfect. It's all overkill. I'm gonna guess I can't MP with her though. Oh, I can. Huh. Actually shocking. God, that is so tempting. Cosmo Burger Ignite. I should have used the arts card instead of going for the Mighty Chain. To be fair, Mordred's fantasy in game is being a relentless, undying fighter, so if they buff her, it's probably oriented to Guts proc on challenge. Why isn't the 50% MP charge permanent for the Grand Servants? In theory, that could help out a lot of servants whose developers aren't currently considering, at least for the time being. Yeah, I mean, Mr. 2 did say in his Annie interview that he wants more, like, more content to feature the Grands, so that's kind of where we're at on that. At least if you have more content that you can use Grand capabilities in, that will make it more of a thing. Okay, chat, that is my 5 nodes. And this is the whole reason why you do it. You literally want a Bond Grail, if at all possible, so. We'll have 51 days to do all of that. But now we go back and we do Ordeal Call 2. I'm still not done. We're in section 16. I do not remember what I'm facing in this fight. We are also doing the Saberface only. Is it Marie in this one? I don't remember. I don't think we were, like, just about to face her, but maybe. I think we used Artoria Berserker in there. My favorite Saberface, Ozzy. Exactly. Oh, right. We're inevitably going to be facing, Salad Larry. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be different. It's also okay to fit in. It doesn't stop you from being unique. Salad Larry. I think it's because Mozart just knows that there's like this inevitability that Salieri can't actually overcome him. So he probably knew he was going to be rescued in the end. Maybe if we just killed Amatsuka-senpai, Salieri would just go back to being normal, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. Damn. It sucks. This is such a good, like, starting card arrangement for both of the units. But I'd rather nullify him and bar pop him. Hopefully he doesn't into the shard. The right side and the number 5 key. I hate when shit like that happens. Yup, I knew it. Have you tried removing the key and reattaching it? Like cleaning the contact, Bob? Yes? Okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate then. Did it just start happening suddenly? Feels old man indeed. And so far the fights have really not been that difficult. But I do remember this is exactly how this ordeal call went. And it's like, it's actually the final fight where you're like, wait a minute, why is this suddenly hard? Fight, lip, and persevere. Oh, damn. Do it. Kill them. All the debuffs are considered buffs, so my immortal team strat didn't work. That's fair. Yep, that's why they targeted Salieri. I've met Shisha. Like, if you mean, like, the fight, I don't remember if I fight Shisha or not. Whoa! Talk about MASH? Yeah. Ah. We just have to keep calm and think of MASH. Oh. So did it give us another command seal, or is it just enhancing our magic circuits overall? Team with them is very sweet, yeah. He's not gonna yuck anyone else's yum. Alright. I say this all the time on stream. Which one of the translation staff is watching me? And I'm entirely joking, Dad. Reluctantly, of course. It's weird that this is just becoming, like, therapy and counseling for Avengers. And also for ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's definitely them, though, yeah. Oh. Third and fourth trials will arrive. The 7 fragments of our soul. Interesting. So the fractured man must be Dante's. Last man, as we know, is the Count. Cagliostro Altar. There it is. She dooted. Oh, it's a double doot. A little bit more squeezed out there. Okay. Section 17. We're getting places now. Oh boy. Well, I suppose I kind of have to go with this. Based off this, I think the appropriate approach is probably Jalter. Sorry, Garter. And I'll keep my Jalter in reserve. The fight with the fucked up debuffs. So what? So debuffs are buffs? That's Marie. Okay. I still really like the idea of Marie Alter. So she is the fourth. After what I did yesterday. So it's implying that she killed the family. Unless they're specifically meaning Salieri was yesterday. Which if that's the case, they kind of just time skipped. Yeah, maybe that. Just her running off in the quote-unquote date. Okay. Please don't hold it against me. Wonder if, like, Dante's himself killed the family to try and, like, force our hand or wake us out of this. Chat, when is the JP stream for summer? I know it's this week, but is it like Wednesday? The 12th, so Wednesday?
頑張ってね。こちらですね。運命をかけた戦いであれですよ。とっておきのクルーズを圧倒します。
Got a free card with Artoria just to get her some free charge. Wednesday early morning.
行
Gotcha.
きますよ。聖女より大い
Ugh.
恵みをお届けです。
Yeah, that's why I was like asking. So I'm just curious as to like when I'll have the time to go over the units, and it'll probably have to be Wednesday night, which I'm sure we're not gonna find out about like the second banners units and such until a little bit later. So I probably won't be able to go over those with you guys until the next week. 48% is a big ooh.
早書きですカルウェナ要請接続一息入れましょう誇りにかけて下がっているようにせーのイーグルこちらです
Good, we at least killed him outright. Oh, that was evil. Okay.
みんな集まって選択は正しいよ
It'll only take like 2 to 3 days. Yeah, I just like literally I'll be able to stream for you guys Thursday. Friday will be like our day off / date night. And that's kind of been the way things have been lately, is because like Fridays are the days that she's not having to go into the office, so it's just worked out that way for us. And then this weekend we're doing stuff with some of her friends.
さあどうだ吠えなさいサブニール
Still not quite a great soak there, but
対終末対粛清暴力
gonna have to do. Hopefully this isn't an immediate NP.
我が復讐の炎我が王鵬の炎ただれた像をで串刺しにするわラブ
Okay, at least get the buff block in. Full loop right back to full is great. Once you do it. Oh. Oh, spicy. All the cursing. It's an unremovable curse at that. Oh no. That's so unfortunate. How much damage? Oh no, it's not gonna tell me. Then what did I have equipped to her? I love how, like, it just got around the buff block. She may be dead after this turn. There's no May. She just will be. So at this point, I just send it. Granted, this isn't my Jalker, so worst case, I just rotate mine in and go bananas. I also assume the fight ends when I kill Marie, but that may not be the case. You thought, woman! Haven't been through this chapter in several months. No, it's fine. I know I'm doing it late. Okay, that's down. And that's got barely anything left in the tank. So definitely not a min-turn here, but no casualties. Really all I can ask for. I still love Jalter's card performance. I think a lot of people underestimate it. Is Castoria's NP cleanse curses? Yes, but not unremovable ones. That's also the reason why Marie was evading, despite the fact that she had buff block on her. Because sometimes things like buff block can mess up even things in a box, but it's usually due to like a coding issue. Has weakened due to the Dark Shadow. Oh. Once more into the break. Well. Don't mind if I do. I don't know, here. Have yourself a Dragon's Meridian. Next time I do an OC2 stream, probably. Sometimes her busters hit harder than her MP. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it used to be until she kind of got some buffs. But she had always been a crit servant. I'm always impressed by, like, her NP gain and stuff like that. Because I think people have a tendency to think, like, oh, she's just not going to have the stars to be able to waste on things like an arts card. And it's like, nope. He still does. Be sure to knock on a stone bridge before crossing it. Ah, this gauntlet. Use Merlin. Yeah, it's so funny because I feel like even before Merlin had the buff that gave him 30% charge, people were like crying for Merlin to get buffed. I was like, he really just didn't need it. Merlin has always and will always be a fantastic support. No aspect of the game has changed to prevent that. And we still use him regularly to this day in things like the invincible comp setups and stuff. He is just the ultimate sustain unit. And, you know, obviously we have things like Proto Merlin, but it's like they just literally are a ripoff of him. Yep. I assume we're just gonna encounter more hands and stuff. Unless they're like, oh, we built you a gauntlet. Here you go. Maybe for quick Merlin. And that's what I've said before, is like I would actually like to see a quick Merlin. I still truly do believe that like Quick could use a like sustain-based healer of some sort. The closest thing we have is Summer Tiamat. I'll try looping, that's a cool trick. Up the step of Great Ocean. Okay. Easy enough setup so far. I still believe a Rin face would be a savior to Quick. I'm not gonna say that anyone has to save Quick anymore. I don't think Quick needs a savior. Quick can just use more rounding out at this point. I do think that's the effect that Summer Tiamat had, is you can call her the savior to Quick if you want, but she technically didn't save Quick. It's just, by the time Summer Tiamat comes out, Quick finally has at least a decent stable of options, and she is the icing on the cake that really does cement it as a solid, like, archetype for cards. I still think it needs more. I still think Quick is behind the other two, but it's not. Oh shit! But it's not like Quick is completely bereft. Whereas before, Quick really truly was bereft. I often wondered why people like had the stance of like, no, it's not. I'm like, I mean, you can say what you want, but a lot of like Quick stuff was just borrowing from another like archetype to fill in for Quick. Yeah, this is just more of the same. It's just exposition with gauntlets. Easy 30 cent quartz, yep. Sakurai staple, yeah. Probably the armored guy. It's literally a choose your own enemy. A single summer Achan. I've even pulled off a banner 4-star. Yep. Giving up on BB Dubai and Kazura drops, I'm just saving for Lohi now. Well, the good news is Lohi is permanent, so even if somehow you get screwed on that one, there's always the chance that Lohi can spook you. And while I do think that Lohi's a really nice unit, I also think Lohi is not a unit that, like, you have to have. So, like, for instance, if you have, let's say, like, Morgan Le Fay, or Ibuki, you don't really have to have Lohi. Lohi is just a AoE quick berserker that can charge, which is nice. Oh, great Vermilion Angst, I see. Well, we're gonna go for the Mighty Chain here for damage output. Because I'm probably gonna hope to pop a bar here and then swap her, since her buffs will wear off anyways. And we'll throw in Jalter and see what she can do. Okay, so he gets Invincible Pierce. Hey, that's a bit spicy. The bad news for him is I literally do have Jalter waiting in the wings. So that's just GG there. Have one BB Dubai, one Pollock, and one off banner 4-star. That's how, like, when I first started rolling for what's her, who was it, Chad, after I got the triple on JP? Oh, it was Azrael. when I first started rolling for Azrael, and it just was god awful. Like, it was just completely barren for the first, like, 500 courts. Then I started getting literally some, like, 4 stars to show up, and then finally at, like, 690, I actually got them. It sucks sometimes. There's not a whole lot you can do. Let me see who all is on. Nice. Alright, chat. Mr. Fox for us on. I'm gonna send you guys Fox's way. We're gonna be done for tonight. I will be back tomorrow. We're gonna be continuing through OC2. With the hope again being that, like, probably tomorrow night I'm thinking we can finish. Assuming there's not like a huge chunk of like news that comes out. That will happen Wednesday. But by Wednesday, I should at least be able to talk to you guys on summer, handle anything that we need to for summer, maybe do some summer rolls, or maybe worst case scenario, we come back and we start trucking our way through Ordeal Call 3. So we'll just have to see. But again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for all the support. Hope you guys had a great weekend, and I hope you guys have a fantastic night. Go give Fox my love, and I will see you all tomorrow.